Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our freshman foray into podcasting here at the Film Club Podcast. I'm your host, Dean. Every week I bring my pretentious art house view of cinema to this little show, as we have Miss Boo, Becky, here, where she brings her lovely blockbusters to try and, I guess, even me out. Why don't you introduce yourself, Miss Boo?
Hello, I'm Becky, and yes, I bring my blockbusters every week, and I try to sit through Dean's art house films and not rip my hair out.
It's working out pretty well so far.
That's pretty good so far. We'll see. Give it a couple more episodes.
Yeah, and this lovely first episode we have here is going to start off with one of Becky's blockbusters. We are coming at you with Scream, Wes Craven's 1996. Would you call this one of his best movie or his opus masterpiece kind of thing?
I think it's one of, his best movies, and, I think it seems fitting with the first episode considering it's October 1st, which means, everybody, happy Halloween. We made it. 2020 tried to break us, but we got to Halloween. We did it.
I mean, it's not actually Halloween yet.
The whole month of October is Halloween. I'm sorry.
Sure.
It is.
Whatever.
Just roll with it. You got to accept it.
Okay.
Let it into your heart.
If anybody doesn't know, she's been celebrating Halloween since June, so... Yeah.
I've been celebrating Halloween since last Halloween.
Yeah, it's rough. So...
You poor thing.
I know. So... Wes Craven's kind of an interesting director. We'll talk about the movie in a minute, but let's talk about kind of what led up to the film. So Wes Craven's kind of an interesting director because he started out basically making horror films. One of his first movies was not House on Haunted Hill, The Hills Have Eyes.
Yeah, good movie.
Very good movie. Last House on the Left, Nightmare on Elm Street, which is probably what he's best known for.
Definitely.
He did People Under the Stairs, and he made Scream.
Yes.
He has a lot of pedigree in the horror genre, and Scream's kind of interesting because when I say satire, satire doesn't mean comedy always. It just means that it's understands the tropes of what it's kind of poking fun at.
And there is comedy throughout the movie, too, as well.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you wouldn't qualify this as a comedy film.
No.
It's not a laugh riot. Most of the comedy comes from Matthew Lillard being ridiculous and then...
comedic genius.
Comedic genius. The man deserves all the Oscars.
He does.
So, Ultra Instinct Shaggy is in this film, if you didn't know. And then we have Jamie Kennedy, who's also, I guess, a point of comedy in the film. But that's about it.
And Mr. Malibu's Most Wanted.
That, too. That movie is the Citizen Kane of our generation.
It is. I still, covet my ticket stub from Malibu's Most Wanted.
I can't believe you saw that in theaters.
I did. Twice.
Yikes.
You're stuck with me. Sorry.
I love you too. So, Scream. When this movie came out in 96, the slasher genre had basically disappeared. It was not as big as it once was. I don't think there was any slashers in theaters anymore.
No, it'd been kind of quiet.
Friday the 13th had gone direct to video at that point. Nightmare on Elm Street, I believe, was the same thing. And I know Halloween, that series, I don't think they even released a film in the 90s until Halloween H2O.
Yeah, that was after Scream had come out.
Yeah. So, with that in mind, Scream comes out at a time, in 96, when the slasher genre had essentially disappeared. And what it does for the film and, the film genre of horror and slasher films... It kind of changed the game, as it were, because the slashers were so dead, so done, that when this came out, it was smart, had a good mystery, had really good characters, and the story and the plot was very tight, and it worked really well.
It also brought back, people that love these kind of movies, that crave, not just, the gore and the violence and the, being scared, but also that they love the psychological part of these movies. That, you're constantly thinking, you're constantly wondering, is that character over there the murderer? Is the main character the murderer? You're constantly on the go. You're with these characters throughout the whole movie trying to figure out who's the killer.
Yeah, it's really interesting because this kind of slasher film really leans into the whodunit aspect, which I think, let's be real, had been lost on slasher movies since, the late 80s.
Yeah.
Or actually since, I guess you would say, the entirety of the 1980s, because that's when you got Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, and Halloween. The trinity of slashers, where it's one unstoppable killer chasing after all these, young adult teenagers and just murdering them in droves. And this kind of changed it up. The killer was far more human. There was an actual, there were stakes at hand, and, the characters, you cared about them. For the most part.
Also, the sequels, they mostly focused on body count. It wasn't even about, plot. It was just how many more people can we kill per movie and make it, that much more extreme and, this one's going to blow up, their head's going to, come flying off.
Well, this is kind of how that works. But I do understand, because we do have the issue that, because the Scream sequels, they're not nearly as good as the first one, and that stems from the fact of, Scream is a satire. Right. And the joke gets old the more you tell it, which I'm very guilty of because I tell the same jokes all the time.
All the time.
Yes, I know. It's one of my sad habits. But let's stop building up the movie and talk about it a little bit. So, Scream, 96. You're at home. You're making popcorn. It's really quiet. You are now Drew Barrymore. You're in some short, blonde bob, wearing a nasty wool sweater, and then a phone rings. It's cold out there. It is cold out there. The phone rings, and who's on the other line?
A stranger.
The stranger has called and asks Sidney Prescott, "What's your favorite scary movie?" This opening scene...
I think you're jumping ahead, because Drew Barrymore is Casey Becker, not Sidney Prescott.
Oh, Sidney Prescott, Casey... Oh, come on, who cares? Names are irrelevant. It's all about the character. But yeah, so Casey Becker is Drew Barrymore, and the voice on the other end asks, "What's your favorite scary movie?" And this opening scene of Scream is probably the best scene in the movie, at least in my opinion.
Well, you're also jumping ahead, too. He starts off with, he called the wrong number, and he kind of keeps her on the line, and, it gets a little flirtatious, and he's asking, are you home alone? And she's like, oh, my boyfriend's coming over. And then it starts to take a nasty turn. He starts to get a little gruff with her, and, the music starts to build up, and you just feel that kind of sense of dread. And you see a little bit more of the house, you see all those exposed windows, and you kind of feel like you're her in the house, and who's watching me outside. Yeah,
it is a good sense of not feeling safe. And I think that's a really interesting part about this scene. Drew Barrymore, at certain stages, it goes from very safe to incredibly unsafe, and the tension that arises from that is very good. Because I think this scene works really well, and that's kind of why I say it's the best scene in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Because this is the first, and I want to say it's the only scene where we have stakes, we have tension, we have build-up, and we have payoff. And it all works out, and it's all masterfully done. With the work of the camera, with the work of the performances.
And we also have, a top-tier celebrity who's portraying this, opening character.
Oh, yes. Drew Barrymore at the time was, A-list actress, I believe. She was definitely a very, very big name for this, and she had never done a horror film before. Well, except Firestarter, but she was 12 or something when she
was
did
really
that.
small.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, small. She was this tall. I don't think Drew Barrymore as a kid was famous.
Oh, definitely. But this was kind of, her as an adult and doing, a really serious kind of role. And even though E.T. still, it breaks my heart every time I watch it.
Well, you're just terrified of E.T.
I still love him. He could scare me and love me. It's okay.
Okay. But here's the thing with this, because it does the same thing as Psycho does, where it establishes because generally in film, the first person you see is your main character. Or maybe not the exact first person you see, but you usually see somebody in the opening scene, and that's okay, this is who we're going to follow, this is our main character, and you attach onto them. And in Psycho with Marion Crane,
yes,
which I believe pays homage to that, very much so, where we establish, okay, this is the first person we see, this is who the audience is attaching onto, and they're going to be okay, we want to see them live, we want to see them succeed, and then they die in the opening scene. Or, well, in Psycho, she dies, 20, 30 minutes into the movie. She's, basically killed in the first act.
Right, but you don't expect her to die.
You don't expect her to die, yeah, it's the good bait and switch. And that's what Scream does, and it does it masterfully here, because as the scene goes on, Drew Barrymore, she's on the phone, then the killer starts quizzing her, because if she gets a single question wrong, they're going to kill her boyfriend, who is tied up by the pool outside.
Yeah, he's out in the backyard, tied up by the pool.
Yeah, and if she gets one wrong after that, they're going to kill her.
Yeah.
She gets one wrong, they kill her boyfriend. She gets another one wrong, and then they go in to kill her.
Yeah. They
break into the house. They're running around. She gets outside. She thinks she's lost them. She sees a car coming up in the distance. It's her parents. She's like, oh, I'm going to be safe. And then that's when the killer sees her. She runs off, and we get, I'd say, probably one of the most gruesome kills in the movie.
Oh, yeah. It's horrific. You know, she takes the first wound is to the heart. Just stabs her in the heart. They knock her to the ground. You know, her parents are coming down the driveway. And that's when he starts to strangle her so that she can't scream out for her parents. And, you know, there's smoke coming out of the house from the popcorn from the Jiffy Pop that was left cooking on the stove. Mm-hmm. And her parents run into the house and they're looking for her. And meanwhile, Casey Becker still has the phone clutched in her hand. So her mom picks up the phone while, you know, her dad's running around the house looking for her. And her mother hears, you know, her last breaths on the phone as, you know, the killers are dragging her to ultimately where her parents will find her, you know, tied in a tree, which is pretty gruesome and horrific.
Yeah, and it's really a good payoff to the scene, and and that opening scene, I will tell you this now, is the best scene, or the best kill of the movie, mm-hmm. and everything after that is just trying to live up to that opening. Like, the opening works great as, like, a short film, but then after that, we finally get introduced to our real main character, Sidney Prescott, played by Neve Campbell.
Correct.
Basic, all-American girl kind of type.
Yeah, girl next door. You know, she's sitting at her computer, so you're thinking, oh, okay, you know, maybe she's at home doing homework. You know, it was the 90s, so computers aren't really what they are now. It's
very weird.
Yeah.
Very weird to see a 1996 computer and be like, man, I owned one of those before.
And thinking that was like, and thinking that was top of the line back then. Like, man, have you seen my 500-pound computer? It's really nice, really choice.
Really good. I remember throwing my back out, carrying a computer up the stairs.
Oh yeah.
So, as it goes, she's in her room, and then suddenly she gets the most Dawson Creek kind of love interest thing going on, where her boyfriend Billy pops in through the window. Spooks her, but, you know, they're all lovey-dovey, Dawson's Creek stuff going on.
I mean, you do love the Vanderbeek.
You know, that man's an idol. So, we meet Billy, her boyfriend, played by Skeet Ulrich.
By Skeet Ulrich, yes.
Yes. See, I'm doing good. I remember people's names. And this scene is both like, oh, it's really nice, their boyfriend-girlfriend, but he is creepy as sin.
He's got the crazy eyes.
He's got crazy eyes, and that's probably why they casted Skeet Ulrich. No, don't get me wrong. He's an attractive, you know, young man. Mm-hmm. But ladies out there, go watch this movie. If somebody came into your room and was like, "Hey, baby, I just wanted you to know I was thinking about you. I was sitting at home. I saw The Exorcist, and it started making me think, you know, what happened to us? You know, we used to be all hot and heavy, and now we're just kind of cooling off." And when your boyfriend starts getting sex thoughts after watching The Exorcist, just leave.
Yeah, ladies, if your man tells you that, just run. You know, don't second guess it, just run.
So your first instinct's probably the correct one. If somebody gets turned on watching The Exorcist, they're the creep.
Yeah.
So.
Although, I love Skeet Ulrich. Love him in Scream, love him in Riverdale. Great actor.
And now, as it goes on, they're talking back and forth. She's not giving up the goods. He feels kind of bad about it, but respects the boundaries. Her dad almost catches the both of them. Almost. He says, all right, I'm going off on a business trip. You're not going to see me for the rest of the movie, because that's what adults do. They try and get out of the movie before the killer shows up as hard as possible. So they go on. Her dad leaves town, supposedly. Billy leaves the room, and then Sidney. I can remember names. Sidney's all alone in the house. And then, after that...
We transition to meeting the rest of the gang at school.
Oh, yes, the Scooby-Doo gang, our cast of characters and victims. Which is weird, because I think only one of them gets murdered, which is weird. Well, okay.
Oh.
Well, 3 of them, but one of them, really is.
And 2 of them survive.
Yeah, you know. So, this looks like Canadian Friends, this scene, where they're all sitting around by the fountain, and they're all like there in their cool, like mid-90s like clothes and stuff. There's cargo pants.
But there's no couch like in, actual Friends.
Well, yeah, this is why it's Canadian Friends. It's off-brand Friends.
I'd still probably watch Canadian Friends.
Of course you would watch Canadian Friends.
It's a good time, eh?
What's wrong with you? So, they're talking about the night before, and, somebody killed Drew Barrymore, this is so weird, and everyone comes off weird as shit. Sidney says, I can't believe somebody could do that. How do you even gut a person like that?
Yeah.
And Stu obligingly answers, it's not that hard. You get a nice knife, you just cut them, chest to groin, just
groin
go...
to chest.
Groin to chest. Semantics.
Yeah.
Groin to chest, you just rip them open, and then Billy is like, dude, shut the fuck up. And Randy is over there being like, it's fine, you just get desensitized to the violence after a while. And I'm just like, okay. All y'all probably are fucking in on it, okay? All y'all are probably in on it.
Well, I mean, if Matthew Lillard, who plays Stu Macher in the movie, if it had been someone else apart from him that had said, you cut, from the groin to the sternum, anyone would be like, yep, that's the killer right there. But he's such a goofball in this movie, you'd never think that he's a killer. He's just so goofy and all over the place. It's kind of like, okay, awkward, maybe not the right time to say that, but...
I don't know, because, so there's something that has to be said about this movie. So I don't think I'm going to ruin anybody's spoilers on this movie, because the movie came out 24 years ago.
But still, spoiler alert in case you haven't seen it.
Yeah, you should probably see it, because it probably airs on TBS every Halloween. Yeah, this movie's probably been cut for TV. So...
It has. I watch it on TV.
I know you do. So, Stu and Billy, we'll discover at the end of the movie, they're in on the joke. They're the killers.
Yes.
And Stu, throughout the entire film, this is probably one of the only few times he's actually interacting with Sidney.
Yeah.
And Billy, he interacts with Sidney a few more times, and Billy comes off as just generally creepy. Mm-hmm. That's just how he acts, how he, presents himself. He just comes off as, kind of creepy.
Yeah.
But he doesn't come off as malicious.
No.
Which is probably why most people don't catch that he did it. Then there's a few things that happen in the movie where, he couldn't have done it because of X, Y, and Z. But Stu, on the other hand, every time he's on screen, he's goofy, he's funny, whatever, but he acts like a fucking crazy person.
He does.
He is so obviously, like, the killer.
Mm-hmm.
Uber obvious. When he's talking to Randy in the video store, he is acting like a crazy person. He's talking about some shit. When he is with... God, what's his girlfriend's name? The one played by...
Tatum.
Tatum. When he's with Tatum, she's even like... Bruh, like, you're talking a little out of turn about some dead people. You might want to calm the fuck down.
Yeah, he gets a little too excited about talking about these two murders.
Yeah, and then you have him in this scene, and this is probably the biggest scene where you're just like, okay, there's something wrong with you. Which sucks, because it's like the third scene in the movie, where, talking about cutting something from gut to sternum, and you seem giddy and kind of happy and excited to talk about it. And it's really weird, and I can't see how people don't just peg Stu as the killer, which is something you probably, if you're ever in a whodunit, the killer's probably somebody you met in the first 20 minutes of the movie, because let's be honest here, only bad movies will say the killer's somebody you've never met before, because they just didn't want to come up with a good mystery. Hashtag I know what you did last summer.
Shots fired.
Yeah, across the starboard bow. You can hear about me complain about that on my other podcast, Double Feature Podcast. Go there. Give me money. So.
Wow.
I know. Shameless plug. So. This scene is just interesting because it also gives us dynamics of who is going with what and who's positioned where in the horror movie trope.
Right.
I guess. Because that's what this movie does a lot. It plays into a lot of the tropes of horror films. And gives into, okay, these are the characters we're working with. They're stock, but we're giving them character. They're not stock and paper thin like you have in a Friday the 13th movie and, Nightmare on Elm Street and so on and so forth.
Right, you get to know these characters.
Now, let's talk about the characters and where their tropes fall, because this is kind of where you're going to get them. So we have Stacy, No, Sidney. I'm going to get it messed up the entire time. We have Sidney, and she's girl next door, obvious survivor girl.
Yes.
Where she's very reserved, quiet, smart, but not bitchy. She's survivor girl.
Yeah, she's going to make it.
We have Tatum, who we don't really get a look at if she's the promiscuous one, but she is definitely dressing and acting like she is the typical, like whore character. She's the loose girl that gets killed in all these movies.
Yeah.
Sidney even says, yeah, the big-breasted girl is running up the stairs when she'd be running out the front door. Tatum is the big-breasted girl that gets killed by the killer.
And that is one of my favorite lines in the movie. I mean, Wes Craven, pegged that line beautifully with that scene, Well, we'll get to that scene when we get to that scene.
So, yeah, we do have the thing where she's playing the whore character, because it's the version whore complex that's in a lot of these movies.
Yeah.
It's weird that horror movies are very into these, traditional,
kind of stereotypes
and traditional, uber conservative Christian values. No sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and you'll survive the movie.
Yeah.
And then we have Randy, who's the nerd character archetype. He's just, instead of being a comic book nerd or the special effects nerd that you have in every Friday the 13th movie,
yeah,
he's the horror movie nerd, and he's really into horror movies, and he's the voice of the audience member who, like me, watched too many horror movies as a kid.
Well, yeah, he's the voice of reason, kind of guiding the story along and, getting the characters to try to survive through the movie and telling them you need to do X, Y, and Z to get through this. And, being high school students, they're not going to listen to the rules.
Exactly. Then we have Stu, and Stu's supposed to be, I guess, the comic relief goofball figure, and Billy's supposed to be the boyfriend jock character.
Mysterious kind of guy.
He's not really, that's weird, because a lot of these horror movies have the jock character. It's you're on the football team, or you're the athletic one, or whatever. And Billy just kind of falls into that role because everyone else has a defined role.
Right.
But we never see Billy in a Letterman's jacket or anything like that. He's athletically built, don't get me wrong, but he doesn't. He falls into that trope because that's the last trope left. But I guess he could also have the trope of just being, I'm the main character's boyfriend and I'm the supportive boyfriend role kind of thing, which isn't a lot of these. I guess they're in a lot of the horror movie films, and you get some mileage out of that.
And he's got that mystery too, because you don't really see him interacting with Tatum. You see him interact a little bit with Randy, but it's mostly just him and Stu. Yeah,
it's him, Stu, and Sidney. Well, him and Sidney are they interact a lot in the movie, and him and Stu, I don't know how much we don't have a scene with the two of them together, because this movie follows Sidney throughout.
Yeah.
It is interesting when you think about it. It's because we're only following Sidney, the only people she interacts with consistently is Tatum and Gale and Dewey, really. Mm-hmm. Which, on that note, let's talk about Gale and Dewey, because I think they come up in the next scene.
They do.
So, next scene, we are introduced to Gale Weathers, reporter on the go. A real Tatum O'Neal, as it were, right? Maybe? Whatever.
Tatum O'Neal.
I don't know. What's the name of the girl in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? The one in the yellow jumpsuit that launched 1,000 ships and sunk 1,000 seas?
I don't remember her name.
April O'Neil.
There you go.
April O'Neil. Yeah, she is the April O'Neil girl on the spot. She's a tabloid reporter, and she is there to report on this murder going on in Woodsboro.
Or Gale Weathers, our favorite friend, Courtney Cox.
Yes, Courtney Cox. Talking about Canadian friends, we have a real one here.
Love Friends.
We get it. We get it. You're into bad television.
Wow, you're really gonna throw Friends down the stairs like that? I see.
Yes, I'll throw them under the bus too when they land.
Wow.
So
violent.
And she is paired up with the only other adult character in this film with more than 5 lines, and that's Dewey
Riley,
played by David Arquette, the WCW heavyweight champion. Just great pro wrestler.
He was also on Friends, too.
Yeah, he was also on Friends,
And he also plays Tatum's brother in the movie.
Yep. So it's really interesting because these are the only 2, adult figures we see in the movie that actually have character. We do have the cameraman, we do have the sheriff, we do have
the principal.
We do have Tatum's mom, but they're not characters. They're just kind of...
They're kind of just there.
They're props.
Yeah.
They're props to establish that this town isn't just populated by 15-year-olds and 16-year-olds. So, we meet them, Dewey takes a shine to Gale. Gale kind of takes a shine to Dewey. And we have the hints that, oh, they're going to be the item in the film. But everybody who's seen a horror movie, the only thing going through your head is, okay, so they're both going to be dead by the end of the movie. Probably around, Act 3 when we get the whole everybody's dying left and right thing. But...
Well, I mean, Gale doesn't even really take a shine to him in the beginning. It's more, for her to get information, for her studio, for her segment on the news, And, this is so important to Gale because she wrote a book about Sidney's mother's death, which takes place not in this movie, but it's brought up a couple of times throughout the storyline.
And it is kind of interesting because that's kind of the precipice, and it's... You know how in a lot... I guess this also goes into the tropes of slasher movies, right? We're going to the camp this summer, but I have a story to tell you. A few years ago, there was a kid who drowned in the lake. Or, hey, did you hear about that weird child killer that was murdered by all the parents on Elm Street last year? Or, guys, like 10 years ago, there was this kid brutally murdered his sister in the house. And I think the whole thing with Sidney's mom dying, that's that part of the story. It's like, hey guys, did you hear about the brutal rape and murder of friend's mom?
Yeah.
You guys hear about that? The anniversary's coming up. I wonder what could happen. Woo! Because that's literally what that is, and I think that's a thing where we're gonna see a lot of tropes in this movie that show up, and some of them are really subtle, like that where it comes up, but it's a point of the movie that you can almost forget about.
Right.
But it's still there, and when you think about it, this movie is full of tropes and gags and shtick that every slasher that's come before it has done, attempted, and tried. But the thing with Scream that I think it works is that it's very naturalistic, it's done very well, and the characters don't play it as a joke. Because that's a thing, because this film, when it was shopped around, when it was the original script, most directors who saw it thought it was a comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Because, it's a satire of horror films. They're reading some of the dialogue. They're reading how the scenes play out. And every director thought, well, it's a comedy, but the jokes aren't really landing.
Yeah.
So, I don't think I'll take it. Wes Craven saw it as like, this is an old school satire. Like a political satires kind of became. Where, it's a satire, but it's not a comedy. It's just poking fun at a genre people loved enough to figure out how they worked. And that thing where Stacy's mom died is just another example of... Or Sidney. Again, Stacy, Sidney, same goddamn name.
It's not, though, but...
Whatever. Where they get interacted and... Okay, that's neither here nor there. But that's kind of the point where this film keeps going back, where it's like, this is like this, and this is like that, and this is what we're doing with it.
Yeah, her mother's death is kind of like the domino effect of why these murders are happening, and we're kind of like going back in reverse and trying to figure out why she was murdered, more or less who was she, because we never meet her, we never see any kind of like throwback scenes to Sidney and her mom and a regular life. We're just kind of trying to figure out what happened, how did we end up here.
And that's a whole other can of worms, because the only way we know anything about her is from one of the sequels, and the sequels get pretty bad.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. But I digress. We move on. After that scene, I think that's when we finally get Sidney alone in the house, where she interacts with the killer for the first time. Mm-hmm. Then generally this is, the shot across the bow where the survivor girl meets the killer for the first time, and it's just to freak him out and let him know things are up.
Well, this is also Survivor Girl's first phone call from the killer, too.
This is the first time, this is the first time she interacts with. That's probably the shot where this is the first time they interact. She's completely safe because we got a whole other hour and some change left, but this is where they interact. They interact on the phone. This is where we get Miss Boo's favorite line.
You say it so much better.
Of course I say it so much better. It's like, I don't like horror movies, it's all about, the killer chasing these big-breasted bimbos when they're running up the stairs when they should be running out the front door. It's insulting.
And then you cue, the front door being kicked in, and Sidney has no choice but to run up the stairs. comedy gold.
Runs up the stairs, slams the door, manages to wedge the door shut. She's calling the cops. The killer's trying to get in. Then, he disappears.
Well, I mean, she can't even call the cops. She's got to type it out on her computer. And it's just like,
the 90s.
Can you imagine, trying to hook up to the internet and get a signal?
This is dial-up. That killer probably just has the phone off the hook.
Mm-hmm.
And boom, done. You're dead.
I mean, imagine if the killer got in and you're dying and you're hearing the dial tone.
Oh, God, my life. You just hear the sound of a fax machine having sex with a blender. You guys do not know the pain of dial-up.
It was rough.
So, she's, emailing the cops. Makes no sense.
Yeah.
Killer is, flailing, and then he disappears. And she's like, oh, my God, is he gone? 5 seconds later, Billy pops in through the window. Now, the space of time, it's not enough because we never get a real cut. So, it's not enough to be like, oh, Billy was the killer. It's just, he was probably coming in or outside or whatever. And then
But
Sydney's
what are the odds?
Yeah, what are the odds? Sydney's like, what the hell's going on? Oh my God, I'm so glad you're here. And then he drops his cell phone. And now, in 2020...
It wouldn't be that odd, your cell phone falls out of your pocket. But in the 90s, when cell phones are expensive and only adults really use them.
And also, cell phones back then were also kind of shitty.
Yeah.
This was 96. Most people, you only had a cell phone if, one, you had money.
Right.
And you needed it for work. Kids, teenagers, they didn't really have cell phones.
No, they were still on the pagers.
Yeah, the only reason a kid would have a cell phone really is that they traveled, I would think. If you're like, oh, I'm going to Spain or whatever for a semester abroad. If you're in college, you might get a cell phone so your parents could contact you.
Yeah.
That's but even then you would have to go halvesies with it with somebody.
Right.
So, but again, I digress.
But also, if this phone, was a Nokia that he dropped,
it would have gone through the floor.
Well, it would have gone through the floor, but it would probably still be charged till this day.
Oh man, old school Nokia phones would have actually taken a bullet and saved a man's life. Old school Nokia phones were superb. I'm so mad I lost mine.
And would have maintained, a 99% charge even after taking the said bullet.
It actually still received phone calls. You can actually look this up. A guy, I believe he was getting mugged, and this is a couple years back, a long time back actually, had a Nokia phone for God's sakes. The mugger shoots him probably a foot or two away, and it goes in and it hits the guy's phone and it stops the bullet. And I think it was a 38 round or whatever. It wasn't crazy, but it was a bullet.
Yeah.
Stops the bullet. The guy, falls over. He's like, oh my God, wait, I'm not bleeding. Pulls the phone out and he uses it to call 911. The same phone.
God bless you, old Nokia phones.
I know, what happened to those days. But as we go on, as the times they are changing, so do we as the plot goes on. So after this, we have the whole thing of, did Billy do it? Is Billy involved? Okay, he's probably not involved because now he's in jail, and then we
transition to the jail, or the police station, and, we get to see Woodsboro's, police station. We get to see Dewey Riley.
Woodborough's finest.
Yep. We get to see the captain of, or the chief of police, who really doesn't do anything in this movie.
Well, I that's a thing. That's another thing with horror movies. Usually, if you have adults that are involved in the plot, they are either A, ineffectual, or B, against the main characters from the go because they think they're making it up.
Yes.
You see it in Black Christmas. You see it in Black Christmas. You see it in Friday the 13th. You see it in every Friday the 13th movie.
I mean, you see it in Jaws too.
Oh yeah, you even see it in Jaws. Well, granted, Brody, he's a police officer, the mayor. The mayor's an asshole about it. Yeah, you see it a lot in these horror movies. And they're at the police station. Sidney's giving her statement. Tatum's there to give her support. Billy, he's being questioned. He's going to spend the night in jail because they don't know what's going on. Sidney goes outside. Gale confronts her, says, what the hell's going on? What do you say about your mother's killer? And what do you think about this? And Sidney
just
drops her. Just throws a clean right hook. Bitch goes down, which Tatum repeats in the scene after this, where they're at home, they're talking, they're mingling. It's like, man, Gale comes up, bitch, left hook, bitch goes down, Sidney, super bitch. And,
Friendship.
And
you gotta build up that friend.
Exactly. And then Sidney's there. She's like, I don't know what's going to go on. Billy's in jail. I'm free. Oh, I don't know who this guy is. What if it's Billy? I'm so scared. Then we get the phone call.
We get the phone call.
And it's the voice again. The scary voice that calls. That's kind of how the voice goes. I don't know. So, gets the phone call. She's like, oh God, what's going on? She screams. The voice hangs up. Then Dewey comes in right after the phone hangs up. It's like,
in boxers with his service pistol.
Which is, what is he expecting? He's like, hey, it's the killer. He's on the phone. Walks out with his gun. And I'm just like, is he going to shoot the phone? I think he's going to shoot the phone.
He might.
He just seems like that kind of cop. Shoot first, ask question later. Dewey wanted to be a police officer because he watched Dirty Harry films. That's why.
Maybe the phone was feeling lucky.
He was feeling lucky, punk. So, they're there. And the scene after this, I think this is where we finally get into kind of that middle part of the film where it's just meant to build tension and give you a couple scares. So we're gonna gloss over a lot of it after this because I think we finally got past the first act and all the character and all that mystery stuff.
Yeah,
we're gonna try and move through.
We go back to the school one more time, and we have students that are now dressing up in the costume that the killer wears, and they're running throughout the school, and it's causing Sidney some serious PTSD. And that's when we're introduced to Henry Winkler as the principal of the school. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of hard to see Henry Winkler be this pain in the ass principal that's,
It's weird when the Fonz is the adult in the room, right?
You expect him to be cool, kick a jukebox, not, reprimand students.
Yeah, which he does, and this, honestly, he would not be a principal in 2020. Because he would bring some kids in. This is basically his only scene where he gets to do stuff, and he's there, and he's like, you guys are disrespecting the dead, what's wrong with you? And he's cutting up these kids, like, Halloween masks where it's the killer's face. Mm-hmm. He's cutting up with a pair of, like, these giant scissors. Like, these things are comically large.
Well, I think these things were, like, to cut a ribbon, but, who knows what ribbon he was cutting, how long he's had these scissors.
And he's talking, and he's yelling at these kids, and he's like, I'm gonna suspend you both, or expel you both, you guys are done. Both. And they're like, that's unfair. And he goes and he slaps one of the kids with the scissors, like, not across the face, but he puts it against his chest. And he's like, how would you feel if I gut you? Like, what the hell's wrong with you, you ungrateful kids? And I'm like, bro, if that was 2020, you would have been fired, that you would have probably gone to jail, that kid would have said you touched his pee-pee, and you would have absolutely been in prison for life.
And he should have just, channeled his inner Fonz and just told him to sit on it.
Right? So... Bless you.
Thank you.
We don't need to pause. You're fine. Sorry about that. It's a little dusty in the studio today. Now, as they're talking, and it goes on. Sidney has a scene with Billy. Billy's like, "Don't worry, Sid. I don't blame you. It's okay." Then Sidney's like, "Oh, whatever. Leave me alone." She goes into the bathroom to try and calm down.
Well, it's even also how that part begins where they run into each other. It's just another jump scare because he's coming up the stairs and she's coming up the hallway and she's already spooked from these kids running around in the costume. Mm-hmm. And it's just kind of, gives you kind of that killer vibe. He's just there all of a sudden, just, has his hands on her and it's just me.
Yeah.
But you still kind of get that vibe off of him, like,
He's always creepy.
Yeah.
So he's there. They're talking. Sidney says, I don't want to deal with you. Goes to the bathroom. She overhears some people talking about the whole thing. They leave, and he's just distraught. She tries to compose herself, and that's when we get the attack by some random asshole in the bathroom, mm-hmm. because it doesn't look... He's not carrying a knife. He's not trying to kill her or do anything like that. It feels more like it's just some kid in a costume trying to scare whichever girl ended up being alone in the bathroom.
And it just happened to be her.
It happened to be her. Where... Terrible coincidence, but it's a horror movie. Coincidences happen. And then after that, they let out the school because they're like, we're done with this curfew. And Stu's parents happen, because this is a horror movie, and as we were saying, coincidences happen, are out of town for the weekend on a business, or out of town for like a week on a business trip, vacation, second honeymoon.
Something. Of course, there has to be, vacationing parents in a horror movie, so, you get the house to yourself.
Yeah, insert generic reason parents are not in town. Mm-hmm. That's why they're gone. So they go, and Stu's going to throw this big raging party at his house, which is in the middle of nowhere.
And it's also a McMansion.
I have a thing I need to know, because you've seen this movie a bunch more times than I have, which is saying something, because I'm OCD about watching movies. So, where is Woodsboro?
Woodsboro is supposed to take place in California, but they don't really give a specific, kind of location, but kind of based on the way the houses look and how lush it is, it would appear that it's in Northern California, maybe near like where some of the wineries and the vineyards are
like
at.
Martha's Vineyard or like up around there?
Martha's Vineyard's on the East Coast, but you know.
Oh, is it? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm learning something new every day.
But it would be, oh my God, where's my cousin from?
Where's your cousin from? Like what? Like Sacramento or San Bernardino or Batman, or he's from Gotham. We're working on it. Now it's gonna bug her. Everybody, don't worry. This ain't getting cut, so she thinks it is.
Oh, it's getting cut.
It ain't getting cut. Now, but, like, I get the point. There's somewhere in, like, NorCal or something like that. I always thought it was some random...
Napa.
So, okay. They look like they're from Napa Valley.
Yeah, I mean, just based on some of these houses, it would give off that vibe of kind of like a Napa area, but in reality, it is Santa Rosa, California. So it is in Northern California.
It's so weird because so Woodsboro just looks like that, because that's the thing with horror movies, again, slash movies in particular, is every city or every town is supposed to look like every town USA, more or less. And this also has that feel, where it looks like, okay, this is just every town USA. It's just when you see the houses people live in, because Sidney has no neighbors. They live out in, like, the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
You see Stu's house, and he lives in the actual middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
It looks like miles from anybody.
Which is terrifying, and which works for the final scene of the movie.
Yeah, and then, but you see the town center, and it's like, okay, this looks more like a regular town in this high school. It's every town USA, and the main street looks like every town USA.
Yeah.
And as the movie goes on, the high school, it looks like every high school you've ever gone to.
Even though, fun fact, it's not actually a high school, it's a community center.
Yeah, It's really weird, because, again, set dressing and product design and all that stuff, it's very good.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that's the point, and I think that's when we get to Stu's house, we really get the idea that, okay, this is a movie, because I don't know what Stu's parents do, because that house is way, way too nice for them to just be, like, working in a shop or something, because it is like,
it's a beautiful house.
It's 3 stories, got big ass garage, they got a boat in the front, there's no neighbors for miles, it's a huge property of land.
You know that's acres and acres of land that belong to them.
Yeah. And Stu's having this raging party,
because
hashtag every party in a horror movie,
of course, and it's because the city's gonna have a curfew because there's more murders, and these murderers are still on the loose, so we're gonna call it early for the night and keep everybody safe while all the teenagers are gonna go over to Sue's house for a party.
Yeah. And the party ensues. Randy brings a bunch of movie or VHSs of horror movies and stuff like that, and they're gonna watch horror movies and drink and do what you do.
Yeah.
And as the party goes on, Gale shows up and Dewey's there with her. Dewey's there to check on the party to make sure, nothing goes wrong. And he's going to let the party go on because, kids need to unwind.
And he also, didn't just graduate, like 5 years prior to this class.
Yeah.
So, of course, he's got to, pretend like he's the cool guy. Yeah, you go on and party. It's all right. I'm going to hang out.
And Gale's there, and she's there to get a scoop with her cameraman, Randy, and...
set up a secret, camera to, kind of monitor and see if the killer shows up or someone talks about the killer.
Yeah, she's a bloodsucker like that. So, sets up the camera. It's a 30-second delay, as is stated in the movie, which becomes a plot point later.
Yeah.
But party goes on. Randy states the rules of horror movies, which, Miss Boo, I think it's your turn to finally give us some quotes from this movie, because I know you wrote them down.
I'm sure I have got my quotes here somewhere. But, there's the 3 rules, Don't do drugs or drink.
It's the sin factor. The sin.
The 3 deadly sins. You don't do drugs or drink. You don't have sex during these movies because only virgins survive. And ultimately, you never say, I'll be right back.
Oh, do you want something to drink?
Yeah, sure, I'll take something.
I'll be right back.
Oh my god, and that's how we lost Dean.
And that's how we lost him. And I think that's the quote that solidified Jamie Kennedy as being, you are the only person who could have played this character.
Apart from his, blow up at the video store with everybody's a suspect.
Everybody's a suspect. It's so good because Jamie Kennedy is by far the actor who will be forever known for this movie.
Yeah.
Forever and ever. His career could evolve and change and do whatever after this. It kind of sort of did.
Yeah.
But this is the movie that is going to be on his tombstone. He was Randy from Scream and everybody will know him. So, party goes on. There gets a phone call from, I don't know who, probably the killer, that informs the party, hey, guys. The principal, he's dead, and he's hanging from the goalposts. You guys wanna go check this out? Want to see a dead body? And obviously, these high school kids are like, "Oh fuck yeah, let's go!" Yeah, and the whole party clears out.
Yeah, a good majority of them rush to the high school. Another majority of them go home because it is getting towards curfew time, and we're just left with the main cast.
Yeah. Gale and Dewey, they go out into the woods because they're looking for a abandoned car that the sheriff told them about. Mm-hmm. And it looks like, it's Sidney's father's car. Yeah. And that gives the thing to those in the audience who were actually thinking who could the killer be and didn't catch Stu and Billy in the first 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. Is like, maybe it's the father. His car's still there. They think he's a suspect. It's the anniversary of his wife's death. Oh, this is going to be good. But they're out there wandering the woods and they discover the car, and it's like, it is Sidney's father's car. We got to get back to the house. Things are in trouble.
Yeah.
And that's, Billy and Sidney, they hook up at the party.
Which is breaking one of the cardinal rules.
Oh, yeah. Billy goes in on her. She's getting every inch of Skeech Ulrich. And Stu's there. He disappears from the party for a while. Tatum is going to get drinks, and this is where we have Tatum's final scene. Where you can tell that set was very cold and she was not wearing a bra. Yeah,
but also Tatum's demise happens during the party, which is even more disturbing that no one noticed? Heard anything.
No one noticed, and yeah, because I'm kind of glossing through the party because it's a party scene, and this happens probably a couple minutes before everybody clears out.
Yeah.
Which also brings home another fact of what's wrong with these people that they didn't notice this. Tatum goes into the garage to get beer, which, as you do.
And it's because Stu asks her, can you go into the garage and get some more beers? Which is setting her up to
get got by Billy.
Pretty much.
So, she goes out there, gets the beers. The killer confronts her. She freaks out. She actually fights him off, knocks him down, and throws some beer bottles at him. And he's down for a second. And then her dumbass tries to crawl out of the doggy door in the garage.
Yeah.
Which, first of all, she could have probably easily have gotten through because Rose McGowan is not that big of a lady.
She's a twig.
Yeah, she could have slipped through. But then the killer also has this thing where he turns on the garage door, which lifts her up because she's stuck in the garage in the doggy door. And this motor. Everybody, buy American, because whatever that motor is, it lifts her up, no problem, with enough force to crush her skull. How does she... How is she supposed to die?
I think it breaks her neck.
Is that what it is?
Because it's a roll-top door, so it just rolls, and, the doggy door is part of the door, so it's just rolling with it.
And it, catches her head, and it's really weird how she's, quote-unquote, dying, but she is dead. We get that much.
Yeah.
And... then everybody clears out of the house, and that brings home a thing where it's, how the hell did none of the kids see this? Because I know it's supposed to be on the side of the house or the back of the house or whatever.
Yeah, so they're all heading off in the opposite direction.
You could probably see that from the street.
Or you would have heard, the beer bottles breaking and hitting the floor as, she's fighting off Ghostface.
Or the garage door opening.
Yeah.
Or even the fact of, I just parked my car on the far side of the house. Mm-hmm. It's really weird. Once the killers reveal themselves and their motives and their plans, we'll get into why their plan is ridiculous. So, as it goes on, Sidney and Billy, they finish doing their due.
They do.
And Randy is getting pissed drunk on the couch, watching horror movies.
Watching Halloween, specifically.
Great pick, by the way. Gale and Dewey are just getting back to the house, and Stu's nowhere to be seen. Now, Billy tells Sidney, hey, I swear it wasn't me, I'm here for you. And Sidney's like, well... what did you use your last phone call for? Then there's the whole mysterious, oh man, he could be it. And then the killer shows up, and Billy's like, oh no! And the killer's like, hata, hata. And, stabs him. We don't see the impact of the stab wounds.
Yeah, he just turns his back to Sidney, so...
And when he turns himself back around, he's just covered in blood.
Yeah.
And then he falls over, Sidney freaks out, runs around the house, and we get the whole chase. And this is where this is the climax of the movie. This is where shit gets real. Sidney's being chased.
Doors are being thrown. Surfboards are being thrown. I mean, the kitchen sink is ready to get thrown. There's just so much going on throughout this chase.
Yeah.
And how does Randy not hear it?
He is pissed drunk at this point. He is 5 sheets to the wind. That's another thing where I think, because I'm assuming he's watching Halloween like full blast, and
Probably.
He's just drunk off his ass. He's pretty toasted. He's watching the movie, and he's trying to focus on the movie, so he's probably hearing what's going on, and is just assuming...
The screams are coming from the movie.
The screams are coming either from the movie, or, okay, maybe some people are fucking around upstairs, or they're just doing party shit.
Yeah.
Because I don't think Randy really knows how many people left. He probably assumes there are still people in the house. And Sidney gets outside, the killer's chasing her.
She falls off the roof and lands onto the boat.
And then she sees Tatum's dead-ass body.
Just hanging from the garage.
She's running. I think this is when she goes to Gale's van, like the production truck where the cameraman is. And she's like, please, you gotta help me. And he's like, oh god, like, what's going on? And he checks the footage, and that's when you see the killer about to kill Randy. And he's like, oh shit, I gotta go help him. Mm-hmm. And then he turns, and he sees the front doors open, turns back, he sees the killer left Randy alone. It's like, oh wow, 30-second delay, just like they put up before. And as soon as he turns back around, that's when he gets got. The killer slices his throat. He falls over, he's basically dead. Sidney keeps running, gets into Dewey's unlocked cop car.
Yeah,
I mean, really? You would just leave your sheriff's vehicle unattended.
Well, I mean, it's
keys inside.
I mean, it's Woodsboro. It's supposed to be this, kind of sleepy town. Who would think of getting into a cop car?
A hashtag Podunk America.
Yeah.
.America, and she's hiding inside. The killer is like, "Hey, you can't go anywhere because I already stole the keys."
This is after we have a few minutes of playing. Which door am I going to lock next? Until he kind of taps on the window with his blade and. He's got the keys. Playing
the little cat and mouse game. Mm-hmm. Killer eventually disappears.
Under the car.
And then I believe, does Gale and Dewey finally come back at this point?
Yeah. Gale comes back. She gets into the van. And this is after, she steps into the cameraman's blood.
Yeah. So they get back. Dewey's like, oh my god, something's going wrong. And he runs into the house.
Yeah, they both split up.
Dewey runs into the house. Gale gets over to the truck, and she's... over to the production van?
To the production van, but I mean, that's never a good idea, splitting up.
Yeah. Which, another horror movie thing. Mm-hmm. So she's getting into the production van, she's getting ready to, go, and then Randy, because this is a fucking horror movie, greets everybody in a jump scare, and he's like, hey, what's going on? And Gale slaps the shit out of him with a brick of a phone?
Yeah, it's a cell phone.
Yeah, a brick of a cell phone, and knocks him unconscious.
I mean, I just want to know how she borrowed Zach Morris's phone from Saved by the Bell, and then beat the crap out of Randy with said phone. Oh, is that the weird universe? Is she, oh god, what was that girl's name in Saved by the Bell? Zach's, almost girlfriend. Oh, Kelly.
Yeah. That's the universe is in. Kelly grows up, changes her name
to Gale.
To Gale Weathers, because that's obviously a fake stage name. She moves to she moves to California because she wants to be.
Well, Saved by the Bell is in California, so she just moves up north.
She moves up north to become this famous news reporter, but she can only get tabloid work, so she changes her name to Gale Weathers. And guys, that's the universe. Zach Morris. So she steals Zach Morris's cell phone as a parting gift from the Saved by the Bell people, and then she becomes Gale Weathers in Scream. Kelly is Gale. Guys, get on this theory.
All right, let me bring Dean back to reality, because he's ready to spin.
Yeah.
I feel it.
I love you. Now, they're going. Randy is incapacitated. Gale turns on the car, sees the blood on the windshield. She's like, oh my god, what's happening?
She hits the wipers, and she starts to go, and, the poor cameraman his body starts to slide down the window.
Yeah, which, weird, but yeah, the cameraman flops over the top, and she freaks out, and she swerves her car off the road and smashes into a tree.
Well, she smashes into a tree because Sidney, out of nowhere, just jumps into the middle of the street, waving her arms and screaming for help. And Gale, kind of freaks out and hits the gas and jerks the car to the side so she doesn't run over Sidney and ends up, crashing into a tree. And then Sidney just kind of has this look like, this is my kind of night.
Yeah, and then I think she's running back to the house, and that's when she sees Dewey collapse on the porch because he has a knife in his back, and she's like, oh god, everything's terrible. And then that's when Randy and Stu come
behind her,
running up behind her and be like, hey, help. Randy's like, help, Stu's gone insane, he's fucking crazy, he's killing everybody. And Stu's like, no, Sidney, please, you gotta give me the gun, this guy's fucking insane, he's gonna kill us all. Because Sidney took Dewey's gun and is trying to protect herself. And Sidney does the smartest thing she's done in this entire movie and slams the door in both these motherfuckers' faces. And is like, locks the door. And
Can't trust nobody.
Can't trust nobody. And I'm assuming in her head, she's like, okay, first person opening up that door is getting a 9mm in the chest.
Yeah.
And then that's when Billy comes falling down the stairs where he's like, help, Sid. Oh, I survived the stab wounds. Don't worry, I got this. I can protect you.
It's very Shakespearean the way he, rolls down the stairs. Sid, please, it's me.
It's me, you love me. He gets the gun from Sidney, and he's like, don't worry, I got this. He opens up the door, Randy comes in, and Randy's like, help, Sidney, you gotta, like, Stu, he's the killer. He's gone mad. And then
we get this turn. We see Billy, go from, I'm in excruciating pain to
sadistic glee.
And he, gives the famous psycho line, we all go a little mad sometimes.
And he shoots Randy in the shoulder, chest, or what have you. Shoots him and he goes down. And Sidney's like, oh my god, what's happening? And then he's like, haha, the blood, it is nothing more than corn syrup and food coloring, just like the blood in Carrie. And then she's gonna run away and she runs into Stu and she's like, Stu, please help me. And Stu's like, haha, I'm also in on it too. Surprise, Sidney, he says with the voice changer. And then we get the reveal of the killers. It's Billy and Stu, and they give their motives and the reasoning, and they pull out Sidney's dad, who they're going to frame for the killings, and let's just break this down a little bit. So, I know we break this down a lot, but here's the motive that they're going with. Billy's mom left his father because he was sleeping around with Sidney's mom, right? And he's like, your mom caused my parents to split up. That's why we killed your mom.
Yeah.
And Sidney's like, oh my god, you're a fucking monster. And he's like, and now, because it's a year afterwards, I'm going to kill you to get more revenge on your whole family for breaking my family apart.
And we're going to do this on the anniversary of your mother's death.
To frame your father, who they pull out of a broom closet.
Or the cellar. I think there's a staircase down there. I mean,
don't know.
At Stu's house, who knows what they have.
Yeah, and Stu is like, oh, I'm just in it for the peer pressure and the glory and the whatever. I'm just in it because Billy asked me to do it, and I'm already kind of freaky.
Which, I mean, I think that's more scarier than Billy's revenge, because Stu's just kind of like, oh, he just asked me to do it, so yeah, I'll go around being a killer with you.
Yeah, Stu is like the actual psychopath, and Billy's like, because Billy's just like sadistic. Right? He's like, he has revenge and he's sadistic, but he has a plan and a motive.
And he also has a few screws loose.
Yeah, and Stu just seems like he's just down. He's just like, no, I'm down. He could ask if it was either this or snowboarding this summer, so I went with this. But yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then their plan, as they point out, is, so what we're going to do is we're going to kill you, kill your dad, we're going to injure each other, so we're going to stab each other and say, oh, he went on a massacre, we survived, and your dad did all these people, killed you in a murder-suicide thing. But here's the issue. First of all, they stab each other before they kill kill Sidney or her dad, so they're already we're in the home field stretch, so we're going to fucking punt this one. So,
or trip right before you get to the finish line.
Trip right before you get to the fucking 10-yard line, basically.
You never celebrate right before you get to the finish line. I think we've seen enough fail videos. You just don't do it.
Exactly. So, first, they give the knife to... First, Billy gives the... No, Billy stabs Stu first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're just like, okay, so I'm going to stab you. And Billy stabs Stu, and he's like, ow, that fucking hurt. And I'm like, yeah, of course it hurts, you asshole. Getting stabbed hurts. And then Billy gives the knife to Stu, and Stu's gonna stab Billy, and Stu just goes in on Billy. And Billy's like, ow, that fucking hurt. And I'm just like, fucking no shit. You guys are fucking stupid. And
it turns into this back and forth thing of, who could stab who the hardest. And it's like, who could have, foreseen this,
It's like the thing where, you're a kid or in whatever, where you punch your buddy on the arm being like, hey, got you. And then they're just like, oh, and they punch you back. And they're like, hey, dude, that's way harder than I punched you. I was like, no, it's not. And then you punch them harder, and then you just keep punching each other back and forth.
Eventually it turns into a fight, and it gets out of control, kind of like this scene.
This is literally, it's literally that scene. And they're going back and forth, and then Stu's finally like, dude, fucking stop. I'm dying here. I'm getting woozy. Mm-hmm. And Billy's like, alright, fine. Go grab the gun. We'll take care of this, and we'll be fucking done. But Stu goes to grab the gun, and the gun is gone because Gale, looking worse for wear, has appeared. And Billy's like, I thought she was dead. And Stu's like, dude, she looked it. And Gale's like, I'm gonna kill you both. And haha,
this is how I'm gonna finish the story.
But Gale doesn't turn the safety off, so she gets incapacitated, gets knocked unconscious, lands on Dewey, and then they're about to kill Gale, but that's when they realize, oh shit, we left Sidney unattended, and she's disappeared.
Yeah.
And so has her father? Okay, that's another point. We gotta get back to this. Her father has been disappeared for, what?
A couple of days.
3-4 days, maybe? So, they've had her father tied up in, we'll say Stu's basement, or garage, or whatever. Yeah. Tied up in his house for a couple of days, so they had to, feed him. They had to let him use the bathroom or some shit like that.
Because, he's still in the same clothes that we see him in at the beginning of the movie. So, I would hope at some point, maybe give him food, maybe let him go to the bathroom.
Because the cops are going to ask questions when they're like, man, this guy looks like he's been bound and gagged for a couple of days, and he smells of piss and shit. Yeah. I think there's going to be some issue there.
Yeah.
And then the whole other point of, throughout the film, you realize that these guys are terrible serial killers. Just abysmal. Because they have... So, this is how we've kind of assumed they've been operating. One of them makes the phone call and distracts the victim, while the other one goes in and does the deed. Now, we're not sure who does what, but I assume that in the first kill, Stu is probably on the phone because the kill's very quick and very just to the point, because that seems like a Billy thing to do, whereas Stu seems more like ridiculous. He's the one who... I think Stu probably killed... He probably killed the principal, and then Billy killed Tatum. It's one of those things they probably go back and forth.
And I'm under the impression that it was Stu that makes the first kill, because Billy's kind of into, the horror genre, the quotes, the trivia. And that's how we start out the movie with, Casey Becker being, given this trivia quiz, to save her life and her boyfriend's life. And in the beginning of the movie, we also figure out that Stu and Casey at one point had dated, and she dumped Stu for her current boyfriend and, boyfriend that was murdered along with her. So it would make sense,
It would be a revenge kill. I got that, but I think it's just one of those things where it's like, it's never 100% sure who is who, and it's neither of them. It's a stuntman, and under the cape and cowl. But you have to get the thing where one of them is probably a lookout who's on the phone with the victim, and the other one's doing the deed.
And you have to give it to Roger Jackson, who's the voice of Ghostface.
Oh, that's an iconic voice.
He does such a great job, just instilling that fear.
But let's get back to this, because their plan is shit. It's absolute garbage. So what it is that one of them is the lookout, one's trying to kill him, like I've been repeating 4 times, and the issue is they're trying to intimidate Sidney and they're following her around. There's a point in the movie where Tatum and Sidney are grocery shopping, and one of them is in a Ghostface costume in a fucking grocery store, following them around. And then there's another scene where they're out on the porch, and in the bushes you can see one of them watching them from the bushes, and I'm like, how is nobody seeing these fuckers?
I mean, it's not stated that it's Halloween Day, you know. I mean, at any point, you're going to be kind of weirded out if you see an adult in costume walking around a market. You know, it would stand out, you know, especially if there's a killer. And they're describing this killer, oh, you know, he has, you know, this ghost face and this whole black costume. And, you know, oh, well, I think I just saw the killer at the market.
Yeah, and the other thing is, they kill Drew Barrymore in the beginning, isolated, out of nowhere. You can see how it's like, okay, you can get away with that because it's the middle of fucking nowhere, because every house is like miles away from each other in this universe. And that one, I can give them, okay? If they had any competency and planning skills, they could have gotten that one.
Yeah.
The principal, when they kill him, I'm like, okay, so you're just gonna bum rush this principal, who we have established in that scene that he's not alone in the school. The janitor's down the way. Fred, the janitor.
Fred, gotta love Fred the janitor, played by Wes Craven, wearing the iconic Freddy sweater and hat.
Of course. And he's just... It's one of those things where it's like, okay, now you're just being bold. Because, one, there's probably not a lookout for that one, because Stu's probably at his house prepping.
For the party, yeah.
Yeah, for the party, and Billy's, you know, the one who's actually, like, killing him, and he's doing it alone. And did he just kill the principal and slip out the fucking window? Did no one see him? Because it's the middle of the day.
But I mean, also, they find him, you know, tied up on the goalpost.
That's another thing.
So it's like, he's gonna need Stu's help.
Hoisting his dead ass up there. Or the other thing, it's like, guys, you're hoisting up a dead body on a football field, and I don't know where this football field is. We never see it. I have no idea what it looks like, but guys, you could... People passing by could probably see what the fuck you're doing.
Yeah.
The other point is when they kill Tatum in the garage, you know, their whole plan for not getting caught there, my guess, is we locked the garage door. And I'm like, if Tatum like actually just belted a scream out and like really was like, fucking help me?
Yeah.
Somebody probably fucking hear it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where I think these two are more lucky than good when it comes to their plans and actions of killing people. But again, I digress. I had my mini rants as to why their plan doesn't make sense and how them being killers is weird. But whatever. So Sidney has now gotten the upper hand on the killers. She has disappeared somewhere in this cavernous ass house, and Billy is on the phone with her being like, where the fuck are you? And Stu is basically succumbing to his wounds.
Yeah, he was like, I think I'm dying, man, while he's coughing up blood.
Yeah, because Billy went in on Stu. I think Billy was planning to be the only survivor out of this.
Definitely. So,
Stu's dying. He gets on the phone with Sidney, because Billy chucks the phone at him, hits him with a phone dick. Is on the phone with him, and is like, yo, like, please, my parents are going to be so mad at me, don't blah, blah. And Billy's tearing up the fucking house until he finally comes to the closet, where he opens it up, and he thinks he hears somebody in the closet, but really it's the it's the scene from Halloween where Jamie Lee Curtis is in the closet and Michael Myers is after her. But really, haha, it actually is Sidney in there, and she comes out and she jams an
umbrella into his chest.
Yeah, which now in the scene, it kind of makes sense because it looks like she just goes deep in on him with it, but in all honesty, it's an umbrella. If you got pegged with that, it'd probably hurt for a little bit, but you want to go down like Skeet Ulrich does in this.
Well, it's a metal tip on that umbrella, too, so with enough pressure...
It would hurt,
You're gonna, break the skin at least.
Yeah, but, so he goes down, and then... does that, like, knock him out or something? Because you don't see him after that.
I think it just knocks the wind out of him.
Yeah, that's probably what happens. She comes out and she just jams this in his chest, and she shoulders him, and he goes down, knocks the wind out of him.
And you see the umbrella sticking out of his chest, so she's actually able to...
Jam it in pretty good.
Yeah.
So, Billy goes down, then Stu comes out and attacks Sidney, and they go have their back and forth, and Sidney manages to get the upper hand and drops the heaviest television in history on his head, because it just immediately kills him.
Well, it's the 90s, so, TVs did weigh around 500 pounds.
Yes.
So, realistically, it could have killed him.
Yeah, I remember those old TVs. Drops it on his head. Stu is dead, quote unquote. Again, I bullshit on that one, but it's not as bullshit as Tatum's, but
well,
whatever.
I mean, have you heard, some of the rumors going around right now?
Oh, God, no. Please tell me they're not actually bringing Matthew Lillard back in Scream 5.
Well, Scream 5 is coming in 2022, so are you going to go see the movie with me?
Of course I will.
All right, awesome. But someone asked Matthew Lillard, hey, what do you think about, your character? Did he really die? And he goes, well, a TV was just dropped on my head. He goes, that doesn't mean, a kill. I could have, crawled out from under the TV and I could have ran and survived. So it's kind of leaving that door open. Maybe Stu did survive.
That'd be interesting, because I've always thought it was weird because Billy, we'll just wrap it up.
Yeah.
So goes on, Sidney gets the upper hand, kills Stu that we think, then Gale wakes up, Randy comes back, Sidney has the gun now, Billy is like, haha, I'm not actually dead, and Sidney shoots and kills him, and he dies.
Yeah.
And we wrap up the movie. Nice happy ending. The cops show up. The sun rises. It is finally peaceful in Woodsboro once more.
And Gale has her story.
Dewey survived the attack. Randy is now free to go fool around because he survived his horror movie. And Sidney is no longer plagued by a murderous boyfriend. But yeah, so I think this, because there is a Scream 5 coming out, where I think is weird.
I'm excited for it.
Of course you're excited for it, because you love Scream.
I do.
But the sequels of Scream, I have found to have diminishing returns. The television series, even... Because I did watch the first season or two of the MTV television series, and even that was... I'm be real with you, it's pretty okay if you just wanted to watch something. But, I think the whole thing of satirizing the slasher genre because after Scream came out, it kind of ruined the slasher genre in a way. It revived it because it showed that you can still make money with smart, good slasher films and smart, good horror films in general. But it also bred into this whole meta ideology of, well, if we acknowledge we're in a slasher movie by having these types of characters, we could play into the tropes, and then we'll be called Scream, because that's what they did. What they didn't have was good relatable characters, a solid mystery, and...
good writing.
Yeah, basically good writing. Granted, I Know What You Did Last Summer was by the same writer, but I Know What You Did Last Summer was written a couple years before Scream was even made, and he just couldn't sell it, because it was a generally generic slasher film.
Yeah.
It gets bought up right after Scream, gets released, I think, a year after, or some change after, and it is not a great film. It doesn't compare to Scream at all. There's a reason I Know What You Did Last Summer is more or less forgotten. It has some iconic little bits on there. There's some stuff where if you watch it, you're like, that's okay. Yeah. I know that's in a horror movie. I know I've seen that a million times before. I just never knew which movie that was. And then you also have, Urban Legends, which came out, I think, 2 years after Scream and a year after Urban Legend, or a year after I Know What You Did Last Summer. And that was straight up a ripoff of Scream. And that's another issue that came upon that.
And then we started to see, classics start to come back. Chucky came back after, Scream. Halloween H2O came back.
Yeah, we had Chucky come back. Halloween came back. We had the Freddy versus Jason movie, which came back.
I still have that VHS.
Yikes! Wow, that's there's some age on that movie. And we also, and granted, we also even have the revival of the slasher genre, because we brought back granted they came back in remakes.
Yeah. Texas
Chainsaw Massacre, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, and it kind of revived it, but it was more in the sense that. So, the slasher movies that were big that came out after Scream were generally pretty bad.
Yeah.
And their sequels were very much worse. So, they brought those back, and it was almost like a return to form in that sense. Where, okay, we've had the digression of, these are the things we acknowledge about slasher movies that are ridiculous, but we still love them anyway. And now we're here with, okay, slasher movies are just this thing that our culture really likes and enjoys because we're crazy. And
we like to be scared.
We like to be scared, yeah. But slasher movies in general are not scary. right? Can we say that slasher movies? Like, I don't think I've ever been horrified at a and like terrified at a Nightmare on Elm Street movie or a Friday the 13th movie. I mean, The Shining, The Exorcist are scary and like terrifying, but that's because of like the suspense, the build, and the drama in that sense. But like a slasher movie, don't get me wrong, there's things that are it's like, oh, that's scary, oh, that's weird, that's spooky, but it's I don't think I'm gonna see a 8 foot tall zombie walking out of Crystal Lake to chase me down through the woods. Or
I mean, you would hope not.
I would hope not, yeah. And it's really weird because they're both more realistic and more unrealistic than other horror films and then other horror films because yes, serial killers exist, but your serial killers are not Jason Voorhees. They're like Ted Bundy.
Yeah.
Which is a whole other like can of worms in terms of like the mindset and theology of how these things work.
And I mean, Scream isn't like, a scary movie where, you're up all night, you can't sleep. It's more scary on the fact that, these are her friends, her peers that are killing people that she loves and cares about. And, it's kind of a fear we all live with, hey, is this friend of mine somebody, that I can trust, or are they going to turn on me? What's going on? You never know.
I guess. I mean, I think that's an unfounded fear coming from this movie, but I mean, I guess it makes sense. That was probably where you would get a sense of dread from coming from this movie, but I don't know. But let's finally figure out where we think this movie ranks and lasts, and is it good? Is it worth it? Does it still hold up? Now, I know, Miss Boo, this is your favorite horror film, or at least favorite slasher. I know that much.
Yeah, favorite scary movie.
Okay. Where do you think this lasts? Does it hold up today? In 2020, do you think this movie still holds up?
I think it does. I mean, we have the technology that obviously ages it, but it still holds up. It's, this story about this girl trying to, get over her mother's death and kind of just, like, crawl her way back to some sort of normalcy. And, it's got, her relationship in it. It's got her relationship with her friends in it. And these gruesome murders that take place during, this story. So, yeah, it still holds up. I think people, who have never seen it before could still sit down, watch it, be entertained despite, the era that this movie's taking place.
I got you. I think I might just be a little bit more cynical about it because I think the movie itself is good, but I think the movies that it influenced and came after it weigh it down. Like, I think its legacy is tainted in that fact. Where, like, you think about it, Scream, this film by itself is I think a solid slasher film. It's good. Is it transcendent? Does it change and revolutionize and make you reimagine cinema itself? No, but does it change how you look at slasher movies, that subgenre? Yeah, it kind of does. The issue for me is everything that came after it, that it influenced and because it changed the game for slasher films, and everything that came after it is just it's never as good as Scream, and Scream was only a fairly good film, and all the things that it influenced never even lived up to being fairly good.
No, but it did also change society because, it made people a little bit more aware of, who are these people that are, calling me? You always get,
That is a fun fact. This film did influence the caller ID and being a mass thing in the United States.
Oh, yeah. After this movie, significantly it went up, the amount of people using their caller ID because, who wants to get on the phone with
a crazy person?
Yeah.
But yeah, that is interesting. So if I had to say, I would say absolutely watch the film, but grain of salt, because this movie is definitely of its time. It's definitely of its time, and I think if you are even mildly into slasher films now, or horror films in general, you're going to be like, this seems so oddly generic, because it leads into all the generic tropes of horror films and tries to subvert them, or at least comments upon them. But I think it's still worth the watch. I think you will still find it very enjoyable. I think it's still a good movie. Mm-hmm. Not great, not transcendent, but a very good film. So, yeah.
For me, it would be a 10 out of a 10.
Yeah,
I'm a fan of the Scream, franchise, and every time I'll pick it.
Yeah, I give it a 7 out of 10 if I had to gun to my head. But that's besides the point. So, Miss Boo, anything you want to let us know about for next week, and anything you want the people to know about you?
Well, next week we are doing a Dean's Art House pick, which will be...
Oh, next week we're going to have a wonderful pick. We're going to have the... I guess if Scream is a satire of slasher films, then I'm going to pick the magnum opus of satires of slasher films. Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. I believe it is a mockumentary coming out in 2000 and... Oh, yeah, you can just say it, 2006.
In 2006.
Yeah, 2006, which... Pretty unknown film. Very... I wouldn't say, like, hard to find. You can find it on Shudder currently, which you're more than happy to look at.
It is.
We're not partnered with them at all, so that was just a freebie for you.
But we do love Shudder.
And you can have a look at it. It's very fun. I like it, but we're going to get a little bit more in depth as to why next week on the Film Club. But if you want to catch up with us and see what we're doing, where could you find us, Miss Boo? You
can find us on Instagram and Facebook at the Film Club Podcast. And if you like the channel, like our podcast, give us a follow on Anchor FM and Spotify.
All right, everybody. I think that wraps us up for this week.
We'll see you next week at the Film Club.
Stay scared.